What do you say? What is it? It's provocative. It gets the people going.
Yes. let me. I gotta get permission from my wife first.
Oh my goodness. Wait a minute. I just realized, Jake, I never updated that countdown. It says Pace Morby on it. I can't even let it play the whole time. People will think that Pace Morby's coming on right now.
Perfect.
That's it. I just canceled it because I realized it said Pace Morby on it. And I was like, oh no.
I think we got to let it run. What better promo than Pace Morby?
It's all right. It's all right. We are
clickbait.
officially
That's
live.
clickbait right out of the gate.
For sure. I love it. We have 2,000 people live. Perfect right? For the first one.
Yeah, on the first one, because they all think it's Pace Morby, but it's really Damon Hart.
That's right.
All right.
The different, the other Pace Morby.
Yes.
The other Pace Morby. Yeah. The darker Pace Morby, that's all.
The more handsome. Actually, I met Pace. He's a nice guy. I like what he does. He's not.
Siri's like, I didn't get that. Can you say that again?
Yeah, the more handsome Pace Morby. I'll say it. I'll say it.
Yeah. That'll be the title when we upload this to Spotify.
Yeah,
Damon Hart, the more handsome Pace Morby.
Oh my God. Okay, so we've just been rambling, but guys, we really are live. So let's just kick this off as the first ever episode of Learn from My Mistake with our guest, Damon Hart. And just real quick, I'm Marie Baginski. So I'm located in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been investing in real estate for about 15 years. Fix and flip, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, all that jazz. And Jake, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Hey, what's going on? I'm Jake. I work exclusively with State Farm. Wear khakis all day, every day. Nope, just kidding. That's a horrible joke that I hear every day. My name is Jake Remillard. I'm here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I'm really excited to be launching Learn from My Mistakes podcast. Been in real estate for a few years now. Have my hands in a couple things and have definitely made my fair share of mistakes. With that being said, Damon, you want to kind of give the good people listening a little bit of an introduction?
Well, apparently I am the better looking Pace Morby, the darker Pace Morby. But in addition to that, I'm Damon Hart, Foxy Homebuyer, the Foxy Homebuyer, I like to say, because that's where I started. And I'm living in Southern California. I got a surfer son, and I got a beautiful wife. And she's a dancer, and I'm here to talk about my mistakes today in real estate. Because I don't think you're a real estate investor until you make a couple of mistakes.
Right?
That's right. You have to. You have to. It's like, it's not going to be easy, that's for sure.
Yep. I think it's actually like a badge of honor. Like the first time I had like tools stolen from a job site, I wasn't even really that mad. I was like, yeah, I get to like tell people I had tools stolen, you know?
You're right. That's the story. That's a tool story.
Yeah. So Damon, tell everybody, I know you said you've been in real estate for a little over 10 years. How did you get started in real estate?
Yeah, so, my story, I don't know how unique it is, right? But like, I feel like I did kind of what everybody else did. Like, I was one of those, I guess real estate started, my interest started when I was really young. It was funny. Every time, I told you we grew up in New York, and every time we'd have a holiday, it was two things that was for sure. We'd all ultimately end up at Red Lobster, right, for dinner at some point, right? And then the other was we would end up playing Monopoly. We'd end up playing Monopoly somewhere, So it was either Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter. We'd all play Monopoly. And I was usually the one that would clean up, and I would always want to be the banker.
Nice.
And then, as time went on, I was always fascinated because, in the 80s too, when I grew up, everything was Trump, especially being in New York City. Mm-hmm. So, Trump was way bigger and cooler back then than he is now, I guess.
This is true.
Yeah.
So funny enough, my first real estate conference that I ever went to was the Real Estate Wealth Expo at the Jacob Javits Center in New York City.
Yeah, the Javits.
Speakers were Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, and Donald Trump. Those were the three Friday, Saturday, Sunday night keynote speakers. So
for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
You're so New York, right? Like, yeah, you can tell you're a New Yorker for sure.
Oh yeah,
so
definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So what did you get into first? Did you get into rentals, fix and flips? what's kind of your bread and butter? Where'd you start?
I just started regular way, wholesale.
Okay.
Back then, when I started, there was no real internet. There was no YouTube around this stuff, right? I was kind of like a dinosaur. So what I did is I went to this 3-day seminar. It was with, I think it was Robert Victor Hansen and one other guy. I want to say Robert Allen and Mark Victor Hansen was their names. And it's called EMI. And I remember going to this event and they were talking about this way that you could buy real estate. I was like a 20-something-year-old kid. So I was like, okay, sounds good. Real estate. I had pretty good credit, but like, you don't need credit. So I was like, all right, cool. I don't need credit. What else? Well, you don't need money. I was like, shit, even better. I don't have any money, right? I had a little bit of money, but I didn't want to spend it, right?
Right.
And then fast forward, you know, I ended up buying this thing, the course, and then we would do like these bus tours and drive around and look and kind of get in. And eventually we got down to real estate, and I was just like, okay, so just find a house that's ugly and then sell it to somebody else. All right, and that's where I started.
And so was that back in New York, New Jersey?
Yeah, so that's funny. Yeah, it was in New Jersey. This is my favorite story to tell because my buddy Kev is the one that helped me get started. Kev was like my good friend from college, and I remember talking to Kev, and I said, Kev, I was like, yo, I'm gonna start buying these houses. And Kev was like, all right. He's like, well, what kind of houses are you gonna buy? And I said, well, the ugly ones, like anything you can find that's beat up or ugly. And he's like, okay, great. So sure enough, Kev, and he's like, what about the money? I said, don't worry, I got the money. He's like, well, shit, you got all the money? Okay, cool. I said, Kev, you know, find me somebody. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, Kev comes back and he finds me this lady. And it was the typical little old lady story. I kid you not. She had a duplex. I want to think it was like Roebling, New Jersey or something like that. It was like a little town. She had this duplex. It was falling apart. She didn't want it. So Kev was like, yeah, I got a friend that will buy it. I went down there, met with the lady. I'm going to tell you, I didn't even know how to run comps. I didn't know how to you know, prospect. I didn't know how to estimate repairs, nothing. Right. She wanted 75. I offered her 65. Like, it was just that simple. In my mind, that's where I was going to go. She agreed to 65. I ended up going to a real estate event with a local RIA. I had that person at the RIA, you know, pay me like 10 grand, the difference to 75. She bought it all cash. I assigned it, and that's where it was going.
Nice.
Oh, that was it. That was like a quick, easy start. It almost sounds too easy.
Well, it was. It was. Yeah. I didn't tell you the rest, though. We didn't get there. This is the start, right?
All right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So I got my 10 grand. I broke my boy Kev off because he's my bird dog, right? And we got going. And then after that, I didn't do another deal until I moved to Florida about 4 years later.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the meantime, had 2 foreclosures and a bankruptcy.
Wow.
Yeah. You know?
All right.
And that's what kind of like intrigued me, because I feel like I'm going to tell some people here, if they're watching, I'm going to tell you the mistakes that I made so you don't have to do it. You Hope did that, so you wouldn't have to go through that, right? Like, I'm going to be that guy today because there's a couple of mistakes I made that I think had me go down that path until I eventually figured it out like years later.
Nice.
Awesome.
I love that. It sounds like you
yeah.
like kind of like premeditated this a little bit too. So I'm really excited to hear like what those mistakes are going to be.
Oh, this is real life. This really happened.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So break it down, Damon. What was the first big mistake?
Well, you know, first thing, I hear this a lot, you know, from people that ask me, like, should I get, you know, like, especially if you're in a job, like a 9-to-5 and you hate it. By the way, this is my real background. Marie talked about it. I'm really in, you know, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving in March, right? So, but like, you know, the thing that people always ask me is, hey, should I quit my job, Damon? Should I quit like the job that I have and jump right into real estate? And I'm going to tell people that was a mistake that I made. I'm going to say, absolutely not. Don't do it. Okay. And the reason why you don't want to do it is because, you know, to get into this business, I learned that it takes some skill that you're going to have to develop. And when you cut off your income, what it does is it puts a whole lot of pressure on you to learn those skills really, really fast. Whereas, you know, you don't really have to. You don't have to put that pressure on yourself. The name of the game is to be successful. And you want to give yourself every advantage. If you're making money, especially if you have expenses, right? Like if you got kids or, you know, you got some kind of responsibilities otherwise, why throw away all your income just to say, okay, I'm all in? Like, I don't get it. I wouldn't have done it all over again. I really wouldn't have.
So then is that what you did? You got excited about this 10K assignment fee and you were like, I'm all in. I'm leaving my day job.
Burn the ship.
Yeah. I wish it was that smart, but actually I quit the job first. I quit the job, then bought the house at the same time. I bought a 2-family house.
Oh, okay.
And then I got the assignment. And then what I ended up doing is I had my tenants. I hired them. I got them off of Craigslist. And then no tenant screening or anything, right?
Oh, nice.
No tenant screening. Just a sob story. They needed to move out really quick. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, man, I would see them coming in with grocery bag after grocery bag from shopping and coming in. And I lived upstairs, they lived downstairs, and they just never had the rent on time. And I went months without friggin' getting my every time I went to go and evict them, I'm gonna have it for you. And it just kept going back and forth after that. So
and New York, New Jersey, it's hard because it's tenant-friendly states.
This is true. Very true. Yeah, very true. Unless you know somebody in Marie's family, you can call up, Uncle Johnny. But I didn't know her back then.
Her family or her family.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
We were just talking about those New York connections, the Italian side of the family before we started this podcast.
Exactly. Forget about it.
Either that or you pay somebody off at the county clerk's office,
Exactly. Look the other way. Yeah. I didn't have that kind of juice back then. It was years later when I went to Florida. Then I got my
Then you got some experience.
Yeah, I got my people together.
So I'm curious though to kind of circle back to that, because that's almost the exact situation that I put myself in. I left the Army. I really was like this burn the ships mentality, and I've always attributed that to kind of my successes early on. So it's interesting to hear that was one of the things that you highlighted as your mistake. And I don't know. I guess what would you? Obviously, as a mistake and something that you've taken the time to identify, what do you think were maybe some of the positive things that have come from that? Because I know that we are going to have some listeners that will have already done that.
Sure. So when I say I would probably recommend not to do it, is because there's some extraordinary circumstances, right, for people, right?
Sure.
For me, even though I burned the bridge, I still had to learn a bunch, and it led me down the path to, I foreclosed on that house. I ended up getting in trouble with another house that I had bought later. And I got foreclosure on that house. And then as a result, right around 2008, I went bankrupt. So it's like, I tell people, why cut off your income where you could just focus on that particular skill that you're looking to build, whether it be wholesaling or some other business. Focus on that in the time after work. You got your money, and it's a constant reminder that you hate it, right? If you really don't like your job, guess what? You're going to be going every day. I can't wait to get out of this freaking place so I can go over here and work on this. And that's why I think it kind of helps people to stay focused, because the reality is most people aren't going to build the skill fast enough to have success. And where they're going to end back up, let's keep it real. They're going to end back up at a job, and probably a worse job than you had before.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true.
So that's what I say. The name of the game is getting out and staying out.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that it depends on where you are, right, in life. Like you made a good point, 20-something-year-old versus married with kids and responsibilities.
Right.
You might be in a different mindset. I know when I started, I was still working a 9-to-5, and I had a good 9-to-5. I had a very good career. I was an engineer and project manager for 14 years. But I ended up, keeping that W-2 job for a while, probably longer than I should have. But the income was great. It was the reliable income, even no matter what the market was doing.
Exactly.
And that made me move from New York to Phoenix, right? And I was able to transfer with the same company, keep that steady income. And then after I had my second son, I actually went part-time. So I only went to the office 3 days a week. It was great.
Boom. Yeah. And I think that's the story that a lot of people don't tell, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm speaking from experience. I would tell you it was super hard. I didn't understand marketing. I didn't understand how to sell. It wasn't until years later when I hired a mentor, when I got started and started like modeling people that are actually in the business, that's when things started to change for me. But, why put all that pressure on yourself? And I think a lot of it sometimes for most people is they feel like that's going to be the motivation, right? Like that's the thing that's going to motivate them. But I have other ways now, looking back, I have other ways to motivate you. You don't have to quit that job.
Right.
Keep the W-2. Keep the W-2 so you can, when you want to go buy an Airbnb, you can qualify.
Right.
Right.
Conventional financing. We refinanced all those.
Yeah.
Before I left. Yep.
Yeah. When you want to get a credit line and get going, the bank will actually talk to you.
Right.
So that's just one guy's opinion, but
Yeah, no, and I would even like support that. I think myself, like I said, I've kind of taken that mentality of burn the ships and everything, and that's like you said, I use that like when I'm struggling, when I'm having a hard time, because you absolutely do. When you dive in full time from that W-2, you have some serious moments where you gotta like really pep talk yourself, and I always go back to that and draw off of it. But I agree that there really are only a few people that I know that have been able to do that, and as you say, kind of stay away from that W-2 world. And it really was from buckling down, but also having a mentor, somebody like you said, somebody in the business. And so not only just jumping in full time, but having that mentor is something huge that I think a lot of people kind of have this negative connotation with, where they're like, well, I don't want to pay the money for the mentor. I don't want to pay for the guru. But man, that changes the game.
Sure. Well, you and I, everybody knows that's on the call knows the trick, right? You're going to pay anyway, right? You're going to pay anyway. The question is how much you're going to pay to a person that could shortcut you, or you're going to pay. It's funny. I'll tell you guys another story. So after I got out of, after I left the job and I got out, went bankrupt, I went back to work, right? I went back and I got a job, and my wife also went back to work. She started working for IKEA stores, and I remember we were sitting. We weren't sitting. It's going to get a little personal, but we weren't sitting. It was actually at nighttime. We were, let's just call it an extended cuddle, okay? For the people who's right, we were cuddling, me and the wife, right?
Yeah.
And in the middle of our cuddle sesh, I get my phone's blowing up, right? And I'm not stopping my cuddle session for nobody, right? So here we are, and once we're done cuddling, I get out and I check the phone. And this guy messages me. He says, hey man, I tried to let you know. I tried to reach out to you, but he's like, I didn't get in touch with you, so I had to take it. They towed my car because I hadn't paid. They repossessed my car. And this guy was the nicest tow truck driver because he actually tried to text me, and let me know that, I could come and get my stuff out of the car before he towed it to the tow yard, right?
Wow.
And I remember this was like one of the lowest points of my life, because at that time, my wife had just went back to work. We were just getting by. I was working at like a door-to-door sales kind of gig because I left my W-2 job, and now I'm back in. So now I'm in a sales job, and I'm working that. And that was my way of getting back and forth to work, because we would go out and work in territories and knock on doors. So long story short, my wife ends up having to pawn, right? Because Jersey got pawn shops, right? I got to pawn her engagement ring, her freaking necklace that her mom had gifted her on her wedding day, like all types of stuff, man, just to get the car back so I could be able to go to work.
Wow.
Because they wouldn't let me just pay up a little bit. I had to pay the whole thing now. So,
right.
Do you have like cuddling PTSD now? Like every time you're cuddling, you a little bit.
I got over it, Jake. Okay. I got over it.
Very good.
Yeah. I wouldn't let that stand in my way. I burned the bridges.
Oh my God. That is a phenomenal story though. Like, I'm just picturing, like, is there anything else on this? Like, was it the middle of winter? Like, Was there snow on the ground? Car?
No. I just, it's funny. I just remember, and I don't think I've told this story that often, is because this is mistakes, right? Everybody only wants to hear successes.
Yeah.
But I remember going to the pawn shop, and the guy that I was pawning his stuff to, we lived in this little town, and he kind of was like, his name was Jimmy. Say less, right? Jimmy, not only did he own like the taxi cab company, but he also ran the pawn shop right next to the taxi stand, right? And he had the other business that was like driving people around. So I had to go to Jimmy. I had to go to Jimmy to ask Jimmy to like, and Jimmy he was a nice guy, but he's still, he's just like, what the? He said, you got your, and now I got to get a brow beating from Jimmy about how I, didn't pay my bills, so Jimmy could take my my wife's jewelry and pawn it, So, and I never got it back, by the way. So I don't know.
The jewelry?
Never got it back.
Oh man.
Yeah, never got it back. So that's so again, if you're watching this podcast and you thought it was Pace Morby coming in and you thought it was going to be, we're going to learn about sub 2, what we actually learned instead is keep your W-2. How about that?
Yes.
Yeah, keep your W-2 and get into this business. That's what we learned today.
No, I actually do love that advice though, because I think so many people like they go to this 2-day, 3-day conference thing. They hear a little bit about it and they think this is it. It's going to be life-changing. Let me burn the ships, like Jake said.
Yeah.
And what I tell everyone, it's like, well, what is your normal like risk tolerance, right?
For sure.
Even for me, I left years later, had kids. My husband, has income as well.
Right.
And we still made a decision like I needed to have a year's worth of salary in savings before I left that W-2 job because that's what we feel comfortable with, right?
Right.
So it's interesting. Everyone's got a different risk tolerance. They're coming from a different place. And it's like, you have to know yourself, I think, more than anything getting into this business.
For sure. But it helps. I mean, the biggest thing that I would say for people is like, it helps to have the income because when you're, everybody talks about motivated sellers, right?
Yeah.
Right. When you're in the business, it's like motivated sellers. What's the most important thing to a motivated seller is getting the deal closed so they can get capital.
Yep.
If they weren't motivated, they would never sell you a house for far below market value. It would never happen.
Right.
But guess what happens when you don't have a job and those people are knocking at your door? You become the motivated investor. So now you're starting to look at deals and like, I think this is going to work. And then you burn up all your time. That's what I did. I burned up all my time looking at these deals, hoping that something would happen. Right? They never did. Mm-hmm. And it just puts the noose around your neck when you don't have to. Keep the job, and I'm a type of person, I'm just like, I tell my son's 17 years old. I'm like, you're not going to college. Like I just told him that, I tell him that since he's like 11 years old. I'm like, you're not going to college. But would I ever tell him, I tell him to start a business now because you don't have any overhead. Anything you make, it's gravy. So start the business now. So that way, when you get into your own, place and you got your own income, you don't have to worry about, hey, I got to go get a job and not do, and sit in an office somewhere.
Yeah.
That's what
I love that too. Cause I talk to my kids, like my boys are a little bit younger. So they're 7 and 9 and, they understand like income, expenses, assets, liabilities. They can build you a balance sheet. And my 7-year-old said to me recently, like, Mom, I don't ever want a W-2 job. That just seems dumb. Like, just help me buy houses, right? Like start businesses. And right before Christmas, Damon, you'll laugh at this one. He tells me, Mom, I really want a hoverboard. So I'm like, do you want to take money out of your piggy bank or do you want to wait and ask somebody to buy it for you for Christmas? And he was thinking about it because I was like, remember that hoverboard, it's a liability. It's not an asset. It's not putting money in your pocket.
For sure.
So my 7-year-old takes like 10 seconds, thinks about it. What if I rent out the hoverboard?
Yes.
Look at that. Boom.
I
That's
was
what's
like,
happening.
wow. Okay. I got you thinking,
I
right?
got you thinking.
Like
And
that was
that's
a
it.
proud mama moment right there.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
So
And
tell me, what else
kids
are
are
you
easier.
teaching? Yeah. What else are you teaching your kids about money?
Well, I mean, for my son, I try to spend a lot of time with him because his goal, his number one goal from the time he's probably about 11 years old is he want to be, a surfer. And he's already a surfer, right? But then as things progress, he's like, well, I really want to take a shot at the world tour, right? So that's kind of how we ended up in California.
Nice.
And what I feel like I don't try to teach him stuff solely about business. I try to teach him stuff about life, and then use the lessons in business because it's always recurring, right? So it's like you talk about things like risk. You also talk about things like consistency. Like, hey, if you want things to grow, you got to show up every single day, right? The things that people just don't mention when you're talking about building a business. And then the last thing that I think I'm really, really great at, and I focus on it, and I think more people should, is like this thing, the mindset, the mindset. Because what I noticed about myself, I can just talk about me, okay? What I noticed about myself is when I first started out, I knew where I wanted to go, 100%. But what I didn't realize is that all the stuff that was running in the background wasn't really supporting what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And you can say that now because you guys can say, okay, yeah, we've been through it. But the person that's probably getting started in business or wanting to do something new, they don't realize that this is the key. Not how many courses you can take, because the course, that's just the input.
Yeah.
The output is what matters, and this is the thing that matters the most. So I got really good at that.
Yeah.
I got really good at that.
Nice.
I love that. It's like a broken calculator, the output's only as good as the input and what actually it can compute.
So real quick, we have like this beautiful arc of like where this whole story has gone, and I don't want to disrupt that, but I do want to, because you brought up mindset, go back to that moment, because it sounded like you were really talking about a rock bottom scenario where you had to pawn your wife's ring and you had to pawn the necklace. How did you kind of bounce back from that? Like, what are some of the things that you told yourself that really allowed you to be where you are now?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So the one thing that I did right off the bat is I had read I read two really powerful books, and I went back to those two books. One was by Dr. Robert Anthony. It's called The Secrets of Total Self-Confidence. Okay, old books, like a soft copy. I read that, and there was another one by T.R. Becker that said Millionaire Mind. And I read those two books again. And what I did after that is I said, you know what, like, I got to start just kind of taking it back to basics. And I started just getting on a mental routine. And that's evolved over the years. But the point that I'm making is, like, I feel like everybody should have a mental routine. It should have a daily routine, 100%. Yeah. Because if you don't, what ends up happening is Netflix, CNN, was Downer Dan, right? Karen, they're all going to show up and they're all going to make, you think that life is over and it's not worth shit. Like if you don't take care of this, you're in trouble. And it won't matter how much money you have. It won't matter how much desire. You got to keep this focused. And I would say that's the main thing that helped me to get out of that rut. What happened after that is what we ended up doing is I ended up getting that vehicle back. My wife had an opportunity because she was working at an IKEA store, she had an opportunity to relocate, move to Florida. So I was just like, shit, if we, go to Florida, I'm like, I'll give it a shot there. And in the meantime, I had did a lease purchase for a house. So I had maybe $7,500, maybe $1,000 that I did on a lease purchase. And I was just like, well, and I did a flip too. I forgot about, not the flip, but I did another assignment for look, all these deals are popping back up. So I did another $16,000 assignment. And then I did another maybe $7,500 in a lease purchase. And right around that time we were moving. So she's like, let's give it a shot. Let's go. And once I got to Florida, I said, I don't know anyone here, but I'll tell you one thing. I'll go to all these RIAs and meet people. And it just kept snowballing from there every day, So that's my story.
Love it.
I love it. So tell us, I think a good way to wrap up is like, what now from all those mistakes and where you are now, what is your mental routine? What does that look like that maybe people can start implementing that?
Yeah. So here's what I did. You like a perfect segue. What I did is I kind of call it my 6, positive mind hacks. The 6 things that I do daily in my routine. I actually put these all together in a one little PDF with some audio. Okay, it's my voice, me talking to you and letting you know what's good. So for anybody that wants that, just go ahead out to Foxy Homebuyer /Damon. So it's Foxy Homebuyer /Damon, my first name, DAMON. And there you'll have all the information. You put in your details and I'll send you all that just for being, cool and putting in your info.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you for that. So that was going to be the wrap up anyway, was going to be like, how can people get in touch with you? So you covered that. And what kind of properties are you looking for now though? What are you doing in real estate?
You know what I'm looking for right now? I'm looking for people that want to invest and want to get started and work with somebody that knows what they're doing and get started, on more of a passive basis, learn, and then get into more active. I think that's the smartest, most effective way to get going, because anybody that knows real estate, it's like if you want to get into talking with, if it's short-term rentals or whatever else, you're creating another job, right? Yeah. And most people want to get away from that job. They don't want to work a 9 to 5. And the way that you're going to do that is by passive investing and making income. Work with people like us. Let us create income for you. Then when you get to the point where you're making a decent amount of income, make the decision if you want to invest in the skills and become good at those kind of things. So for me, I'm open to talking to anybody that wants to get into real estate but wants to do it a little bit more passively, earn big returns.
Awesome. All right. So are you on Instagram?
Oh yeah.
What's your handle on Instagram?
On Insta,
yeah, it's right. The Pace Morby. I love it. The dark Pace Morby. The dark. Right? That is it's just Damon Hart, Mr. Foxy. My first and last name, Mr. Foxy. You'll see a guy that has a hat. I usually am wearing a hat. I used to wonder why, but my dad wore hats all the way through like my childhood. So
now you know.
Now I'm a dad. I just wear hats. It's weird. Very weird. Yep.
It's part of the
gig. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, dad hats. What else? Anything else?
No, I'm so excited we had you. I think you covered a lot of ground, and I think we ended it on a high note. What? He's rocking it. So I do this thing with my kids, Damon. My kids, they have to look in the mirror at night and say, "I'm smart, I'm strong, I can do anything," and throw punches in the mirror.
I love it. I'm strong. I'm smart.
I'm strong.
Yes.
Heck yeah.
So
you're
all right.
You're a good mama for sure.
Thank you. And I'm a mama boys too, so I gotta keep them pumped and excited. But
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I am complete. Jake, do you have anything else that you want to ask Damon, or how you want to wrap this up?
It was awesome having you. I think rockstar first guest, couldn't have asked for a better one. And I love the fact that you kind of ended it by saying that you like to serve the people whose mistake is who you were trying to identify with in the beginning of this. So just awesome job.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys for having me. And, I'm wishing you nothing but love and blessings on this podcast. And if I can ever be back on again and talk about something else and tell you more mistakes, I'm always ready.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, and if Pace watches this, right? Tell him to hop on this thing. Pace, come on. Tell us if you're
Mr. Foxy Dark Pace.
That's it. Dark
called him out right here. You heard it first.
Come on here. Tell us if you're your mistakes too. Yeah, I'm sure he has a few. I love that guy.
All right. Peace, everybody. Thank you.